Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, we've been doing this for a while now, and we've come to the time where it's time to talk about sex. Um, we want to talk about sex and intimacy, and as we were discussing what it looked like to actually talk through this, we're realizing that it's a really complicated thing to try and talk through because sex is not intimacy in and of itself, but it helps to build and impact intimacy. But without intimacy, then sex is not as enjoyable and it's not going to create it in and of itself. So when we started talking about this, we started thinking about it. If you've watched our other videos, you know that most of the stuff we talked about is stuff that we've struggled with ourselves. This one's no different. This has been an area where we've really struggled to find a rhythm, to find a place where we could both get our needs met and enjoy it and not have it be something that was difficult. So we talked a few weeks ago about expectations, and when we walked into this is one area where I had huge expectations. I really, I was 24 years old when we got married and had the idea that sex would be plentiful and often and super enjoyable all the time, and when we got married, that's just not how it worked out. As we started getting into our marriage, we were having our own struggles, and in the midst of the struggle, sex was the last thing on the table because we were fighting over all kinds of stuff. And so my expectations, even when things were well between us, weren't necessarily being met, because even if things felt okay in the moment, they weren't okay big picture. And that was an area for Jackie where she just wasn't in a place where she really wanted to connect sexually. And so it's something that we've struggled with through the years. And then there's been other issues that have played into it, and I'll let Jackie talk about some of those things for her.
Yeah, I think like a lot of women, there were a few different struggles. When your marriage is in a hard place and you don't feel close, I think as women we want to feel a certain closeness and a certain adoration, which helps to drive us towards wanting to be intimate sexually. And like Mike said, that wasn't really where we were at for quite some time. And then I just really struggled with my body and my body image and feeling beautiful and believing that Mike saw me as beautiful, and being vulnerable in that way physically was really difficult. And it really was an act of mental gymnastics for me every time, emotionally, to get myself ready and to be in that place and to just endure all that went through my mind and just the struggle there. And I just naturally don't have a very strong sex drive. It's not something that I just naturally desire. So trying to meet Mike's needs in that was really difficult, and it was something that was just another thing that drove a wedge between us, because not only did I not naturally have that drive to meet it, but in marriage tension, I didn't want to meet that need a lot of times. And as we all know, that can be a source of power in our marriage, to withhold or to give. And so I was, in my greed and my selfishness, I withheld a lot, and that also met my need of not having to deal with the body image stuff, and that I didn't really have a drive for it in the first place. And so there was a whole stew of stuff that was happening there. And what I've learned along the way is that there's so much more to this than the physical need that we each have. That there is a huge spiritual component to this part of our marriage, and that our marriage needs this. Our marriage needs this to be able to not just be intimate, but to it's part of the healing process when you are in a season of tension and struggle in your marriage, and where you do feel or you are disconnected from one another. It is part of the process of coming together. And when we come together physically and we're giving to one another sexually, that spreads out into all parts of our marriage, where it really starts to impact every piece of the rest of our lives. And we find out that it's bringing us together in a way that maybe we weren't coming together well in other parts of our marriage.
It's, again, as we were talking, we realized it's a really complicated one, because you can boil it down to just the physical act. But it's, like Jackie said, it's so much more. I mean, that's actually, it's the place where you're most vulnerable, where you're actually physically standing there naked with somebody and going, this is me, without anything to hide. This is who I am. And there's a vulnerability there that you don't experience anywhere else. And it's so important to be able to lean into that in one another, and to be able to hand that to somebody and go, this is it. I need you to hold this carefully. And for the other person to take hold of that and say, okay, I've got this, and to be there in those moments, and to continue to help the other one understand their value, to help them understand their beauty in the midst of this. It's huge. And it's very easy to just boil it down to the physical act and say, okay, it's just about sex. And honestly, in our society, sex is just a thing that you do if you're in a relationship with somebody. And you know, we've been married almost 22 years now, and as we've come through this, we've definitely learned that the connection that happens there has been huge for us, has been valuable in the midst of, like Jackie said, healing processes, getting to a place where we're able to actually just lean in and trust one another. And yet it's not the thing that has done that. And so that's where it gets difficult, because so many components get tied together in the midst of it.
You know, there's such a gift that God gave us in sex, and it is such a powerful thing in our marriage. And we talked a few weeks ago about how there's you, and there's your spouse, and then there's your marriage. And sometimes you're in a place in your marriage where you don't know how to give to your spouse. You don't want to give to your spouse. You're so broken that you don't know how to give, but your marriage really needs you to. And so you can take your spouse's face off of the situation, and you can say, what does my marriage need from me right now? And sometimes that's more palatable, to be able to get past our own pride or selfishness, and to be able to give to our marriage what it needs. I have found that our marriage needs for our sexual relationship to be healthy and thriving. And we're in a good place, but we haven't always been in a good place. And so it's easy now for me to give to Mike, but there was a time where I really sought the Lord, and I was really broken in this area, and really sought him. And what I heard in my spirit was to abide, to abide in God and his design for us in this area. And it really was an act of obedience for me to step into his design. And his design is that we give ourselves. We don't hold on to our bodies as our own, but we give our bodies to our spouse and to our marriage, and we give freely and we give often. And so I have tried to stand in that. I have tried to be in that. And at first it was really hard. It was just an act of obedience. And kind of simultaneously, Mike really initiated actually like a scheduled time for us every week. And that may sound silly and unauthentic, or just weird to think about scheduling that, but it was something that worked for us. It was a time of the week that worked, and we could count on that, and I could actually ready my mind and my heart for that. And so as awkward as that may have been at first, it became something that was really natural to us, and really was a gift to our marriage, and really helped us in this area. And I feel like now things are a little bit more, we're a little bit more free in that, and that where I'm pursuing him more. And it's not really even because I have a drive. It wasn't that I naturally all of a sudden got this physical drive for it. It's just something that I see has been so beneficial to our marriage. I want to foster that part of our marriage. I want to give, I want to pour into us in that way. And regarding the body image, that's been a journey my whole life. And like Mike said, we've been married for almost 22 years, and that has been a struggle for me the entire time, and it's getting better. But I didn't believe Mike for a long time that he really desired me and really thought I was beautiful. So I even felt like duped a little bit, that he was just kind of snowing me. And I have really discovered through this part of our marriage that being vulnerable and being accepted, that in my imperfection, in my body and my imperfection and just who I am as a person, Mike has truly loved me and truly accepted me and has drawn near to those ugly parts of myself, and has even loved those parts well, been so patient and so tender with those parts, that I have really come to understand God's love for us better. Because if a man can love me like that, how much more does my Father in heaven love and accept me and draw near to all of who I am? Not the great parts, but the yucky parts too. He draws near, and so he draws near to each of us like that. And that's been a huge gift that I've been given through the sexual part of our marriage, and just in our marriage in general, is to just know the love of the Father in such a deep and vulnerable way.
So as we were talking yesterday, Jackie said to me, so what's the takeaway? And she didn't like my answer, just have more sex. So the takeaway is this: sex won't fix your marriage. It's not designed to. However, it can be a part of the healing process, and it will create more intimacy. It will drive you to places that you can't go without it. And so lean into that, trust your spouse, and really find the freedom to enjoy those things and to really trust one another in the midst of it.
Yeah, I encourage you to let go of insecurity, let go of pride and the power that you have to withhold, and to really give, to really free yourself to step closer to your spouse and to offer who you are. And that might feel really scary, especially if you're in a really difficult season in your marriage. You might feel like your spouse doesn't even deserve that from you, and that's a real feeling. But like we've talked about before, it's not about what we deserve, because that's not God's relationship with us. It's about loving well. And so, like always, we're here to walk with you even in this area of marriage. And if you want to reach out to us and we can connect with you, we would love to walk through this with you. So be brave and reach out if you'd like us to walk with you in this.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.